Good morning, Miss Hanin. Today we are going to present primary science lesson plan applying constructivism theory. Now I will introduce my team members who are Pak Wai, Eileen, and me, Yuping. I will pass to the next speaker.
So our lesson plan is encompass the subject science, and our class is year 3, so meaning 9 years old students, and our team is density with the topic as sink and flow. So our learning outcome is by the end of this lesson that we have planned out, students will be able to predict whether the object that they place on the water will sink or float, compare which objects that will float on or sink on the water, and finally to identify which objects will sink and or float on the water. So our tools and materials for the lesson plan will be the 5 plastic spoons and 5 metal spoons, 5 coins and marbles, 5 ping pong balls, and 5 sponges, 5 eraser rubbers, 5 small rocks, 5 plastic water bottles, 5 wooden popsicle sticks, and most importantly, the 5 large containers filled with water. We have prepared so many tools and materials so that the students can experiment themselves which object can float or sink throughout the whole learning activity when they experiment with float and sink. So I will begin to explain the procedure for our lesson plan. So the lesson will begin with a recap on what the students have previously learned, which will be the topic on float and sink. Then we will proceed to introduce the students the activity itself, where they will expand their learning on float and sink by actually doing the experiment itself. So the teachers will demonstrate the lesson by showing the students how they conduct the experiment of float and sink, so that everything is clear for the students to execute their experiment. Then the lesson will proceed with discussion and with the students, like making predictions on what are the outcomes of the experimentation, so that they can roughly know that which objects can sink and float. And after that, we will divide the students into groups. Then we will remind them how to properly use the tools and materials. So we will remind them that the tools and materials can only be used for the experimentation, nothing else. And we will finally hand out the tools and materials so that we can start the experimentation itself. So when we start the experiment of placing the objects on water, whether it be float or sink, the teachers would supervise and facilitate the whole entire process of experimentation so that they can invigilate to ensure that students perform the experiment safely and to help on any inquiries that students might have when doing the experiment. And we will end the experimentation after all of the groups have already conducted their experiment, so meaning all of their objects have already placed on the large container bowl filled with water, and we will proceed with a discussion on the results that the students have gathered after they have done the experimentation. So meaning that what objects will sink, which objects will float, and this will be a sharing session with different questions being asked by us, the teachers, on what they have observed throughout the experimentation. And finally, the lesson will summarize on the topic of float and sink, and the lesson ends with a clean up and tidy up of all of the tools and materials that we have used earlier on for the experimentation on the sink and float. Now, Yiping will be the one explaining on the target audience for our slides.
Thank you, Paula. The target audience for this lesson is Year 3 students aged 9 years old. At this age, children are naturally curious and enjoy learning through hands-on activity, observation, and experimentation. They are able to think logically and make simple predictions based on their previous experience. The topic sing and flow is suitable for them because it is closely related to their everyday life through activities such as predicting, observing, experimenting, discussing, and reflecting. Students can actively explore how different objects behave in water. The lesson is also designed to cater to different learning styles, including visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learner. Besides gaining scientific knowledge, students can develop important skills such as observation, problem-solving, communication, and teamwork. Next, the learning theory selected for this lesson is constructivism. Constructivism is a learner-centered approach that emphasizes learning through experience, interaction, and reflection. Students construct their own understanding by connecting new knowledge with what they already know. This theory is closely associated with Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. Piaget believed that children learn by interacting with their environment, while Vygotsky emphasizing the importance of social interaction and teacher guidance in the learning process. In a constructivist classroom, the teacher acts as a facilitator rather than simply providing answers. Constructivism is highly suitable for the topic sing and flow because students learn best through hands-on investigation. They can make predictions, conduct experience, experiment, observe results, discuss findings with their peers, and draw conclusions. Through this activity, students actively build their understanding of scientific concepts and develop critical thinking skills. Now I will pass to the Eileen.
Right, thank you, Yupi. So now I will explain how is applied in our lesson and discuss its benefit and challenging. So constructivism is applied by making the lesson student-centered, just like Yupi shared just now. So instead of directly explaining why objects sing or float, students first make predictions based on the prior knowledge. For example, they predict whether an eraser, a stone, or a ping pong ball will sing or float before experimenting. Then they carry out a hands-on experiment, observe the result, and compare them with their predictions. Through this process, students actively construct their own understanding instead of receiving information from the teacher. So during the lessons, the teacher acts as a facilitator by asking guiding questions rather than giving the answer directly. For example, the teacher may ask, why do you think this object floated? Or what was your predictions correct? Students also share and discuss their findings with their friends, allowing them to learn from different perspectives before the teacher summarizes the key concept. Moving on to the benefits, constructivism encourages active learning because students learn through explorations and experiment, which increase their motivations and engagement. Instead of memorizing the concept, students discover the answer by themselves through the experiment. It also develops critical thinking and inquiry skill as students analyze their observations and explain their results using evidence. In addition, group activity promote collaboration and communication skill as well. However, there are some challenges. Constructivist lessons usually require more time because students need to explore, experiment, discuss, and reflect. Compared with traditional teaching, this learning process cannot be complete within a very short lessons. Not only that, classroom management can also be challenging. A group activity may become noisy, and some students may not participate like the other. Therefore, teachers need to monitor each group and encourage every student to participate actively. So overall, constructivism helps students actively build meaningful understanding through hands-on learning, while teachers provide guidance to support the learning process. So that's all for my part. I will pass to Part Wei to conclude.
Thank you, Eileen. So the conclusion for our lesson plan is that the learning theory of constructivism is a very suitable learning theory for our lesson plan, as it how to say, facilitate and promote active learning among students when we execute the experimentation. So meaning that they get to learn the lesson hands-on. However, it does not accommodate to all types of learners, as each learner differs in how they interact with or construct knowledge, and also how their learning needs and individual background play a significant role in their effectiveness of learning a topic. Ultimately, the success of a lesson really depends on the how well we accommodate to these diverse needs and learning style of students, rather less than the learning theory of one specific education psychology. So that will be all. Thank you for listening to our presentation, Ms. Hani.